everyone, and welcome back to Ghouls Night In, the spooky chat show with your best ghoul friends. I'm Penny Snark,
And I'm Midge Munster.
and when we were talking about monster cereals last week, we talked about how Brian Fuller was struck by one of his first spooky experiences as a child, being monster cereal, and I was recently reminded of one of mine, and
Ooh.
we're going to talk about Scooby-Doo today.
Oh, I can't wait.
So if anyone has missed the big news, Scooby-Doo has been rattling around the internet lately because Velma Dinkley is a longtime queer icon who is now confirmed lesbian.
Confirmed. Again, welcome back to Penny and Midge show you how it's gay.
Yes. So yeah, Scooby-Doo was definitely one of the first spooky things that I was into. Obviously, Scooby-Doo is an extremely mild level of spooky, which was what my scared little self needed
Yeah,
in
I think
order
it was
to.
both of our horror thresholds as children probably laid somewhere around the Scooby-Doo mark.
Yes.
And
So
even that, certain episodes really
yeah.
stuck with me.
Yeah, some of them are pretty spooky. But yeah, Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? The original first premiered in 1969. So it's so wild that it's over 50 years later, and the show is still popular, and they're still making new versions of it.
Yeah, it's because it's so good.
It is. So I learned some history from the provocatively titled Smithsonian article,
Uh-oh.
how Scooby-Doo's origins are related to the RFK assassination. If you want to just drop right in, we're going full out.
I have so many questions.
Well, I have answers for you,
Great.
Midge. So basically, as this article describes, throughout the 1960s, cartoons were basically getting more and more violent. It was in the 1950s that stuff like Tom and Jerry was really popular, and it was kind of comedy and hijinks. But people were in the 60s were into the space race, they were into superheroes, secret agents, and these cartoons were just getting more intense, really. They described them as action adventure cartoons with lots of fantasy violence, lots of peril, people were actually killing bad guys and stuff in these cartoons. So they were a little intense, but that was what people were enthused to see. That was what the networks wanted to buy. And they were saying that in starting in 1968, they announced 6 new action cartoons on TV. And so it was just dominating all of the media.
I have to tell you, I won't go into detail right
Mm-hmm.
now, but this is going to tie so beautifully into our next episode.
Ooh, I love when that happens.
You and I were on a weird wavelength this week.
But of course, in 1968, there was also a lot of real life violence on TV. There was the Vietnam War, protests, Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination, and the riots that followed that. And Robert F. Kennedy, who I found out did not know he had 11 children.
Oh, that's 10 too many.
That's right. That is too many. That is too many.
That's a lot of kids.
But he had kind of been a champion of children's causes throughout his political career. And while he was the attorney general, he worked with the FCC and wanted to, quote, clean up the vast wasteland of children's television.
Oh, sure.
But
Save the kids, am I right?
Yep, right. He was assassinated in June of 1968, and just hours after his death, LBJ announced a National Commission on the Causes and Prevention of Violence. And it just really sparked off, as we talk about in many episodes, a moral panic that had people just really searching around for things that they could do. Obviously, a lot of people felt very anxious and out of control with all of the real life violence they were experiencing. And they were like,
And it's
some.
almost like sometimes art imitates life,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yep.
people are looking for an outlet to deal with those feelings,
Right.
and
But
not the other way around.
and they were like, well, what can you do about real life violence? I feel kind of helpless there, but I can crack down on children's television.
But I can make sure that that darn Scooby gang.
Right. So the networks announced that they would start introducing new, less violent shows. So they're gonna need some new shows.
Sure, sure. What do we do in a PR crisis? We introduce new
New
characters.
characters. So this entire thing, like as I go into describing this, it was cracking me up because I was thinking how we had talked about the Munsters and the Addams family, and just
Mhm.
the idea that it was like, haha, just make another one. And
Yeah.
like TV in the like late 60s, 70s was basically, it appears to me, just, well, make another one of that. Like
Well, that's doing well. Let's do it
every
again.
everyone was just copying each other fully all the time, and even copying themselves. So apparently CBS launched the Archie show based on Archie comics. It was a huge hit. The song Sugar Sugar was even a #1 Billboard hit. And they were like, hey, let's have more of this. Let's have another teen band show. What about a show about a teen band that solves mysteries?
Love.
Which was also just inspired by, they were like, oh, it's like a cross between this mystery show and Archie.
Yeah. We'll just put them in a blender.
Yeah. So the original concept was called, that Hanna-Barbera created, was called Mysteries 5. And it featured 5 teens in a band and their dog who played the bongos, who was named Too Much.
A bongo playing dog.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. And so, fun fact, they actually initially wanted Too Much to be a Great Dane, but they were worried that it would be too close to Marmaduke. So, before they
Mm.
pitched it to the network, they switched him into a sheepdog, which was what the kids on the Archie show had. So,
to
there you
avoid
go.
to avoid being too close to anything else, they
Right.
made it exactly like this other thing.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense.
Yep. So there was back and forth. So like the network declined the pitch the first time. They like took it back. They were like, all right, we'll go back to the Great Dane, ditch the 5 teens. We'll do 4 teens. They're not going to be in a band anymore.
I'm kind of
They
bummed that they weren't. I didn't know that was on the table.
Right? Yeah, and like I feel like the show suddenly makes a lot more sense when you're like, why would there be a
Why would
bunch of people traveling around in a
in a
van
van together?
doing stuff? It's
And
like,
like
oh, a band, that makes sense, and now they're just random teens.
well, and like what do these 4 people have in common?
Yep.
How did they find each other? Because they, yeah, if they're doing some kind of group activity, that makes sense. But if you're going to sell me that like these 4 people just like answered a Craigslist ad and now they travel together in
Right.
a van, I don't buy it.
No.
Velma's not putting up with that shit, I can
Mm-mm.
guarantee.
Hell no. So in a second pitch, they tried naming it "Who's Scared," which I'm like, that is not memorable,
What a perfect name.
and it's just extremely hard to say. Like that was the first time that I said it out loud, and it was worse than I expected. But they were like, okay, no, that's not going to work, and supposedly inspired by listening to Frank Sinatra's "Strangers in the Night" and all of his little doobie doobie doo, they were like, oh, that's a good sound. Let's call it Scooby Doo.
Wow. Thanks, Frank.
And yep, thank you, Frank. And thus Mysteries Incorporated, Scooby Doo was created. So we have our gang of characters. We've got Shaggy, who, okay, so this was the other thing. So I was reading this. Apparently, the 4 characters of Scooby Doo are just mapped on 4 teens from a different TV show. It was like The Lives of Dobie Gillis, which I have heard of existing but know nothing about. So I'm
No, I
sorry
don't
if we've
either.
got any Dobie stands in our audience, but they were just like, okay, we'll just take the characters from that and make them these cartoons now. So more originality in media.
Well, and it is kind of interesting. I don't know, which came first, the chicken or the egg, but the Scooby Doo characters also very much kind of become the archetypes of like any teen horror film,
Yeah.
too. You've got like the stoner, the like
Mm-hmm.
nerdy virgin, the like, hot girl. Like
Right. And see, I love the fact that you immediately go to that because I literally have written down Shaggy, a cowardly beatnik slash stoner
yeah.
type. Who, fun fact I mean, I feel like this is a well known fact, but some people are still surprised. For many, many years, voiced by Casey Kasem of American Top 40.
Yeah.
And he actually came back to voice Shaggy in one of, I think, the 2002 TV show on the condition that they make Shaggy a vegetarian like he was. So like he was like, promoting his vegetarian lifestyle, which I thought was interesting.
Little hippie
A
Shaggy.
little hippie vibes. We have Daphne, the hot damsel in distress, infamously falling into things, getting captured by people. And I did appreciate, we note that in more modern adaptations, they kind of like use Daphne to like react to her own previous Daphne-ness. And now it's like, no, Daphne knows karate and she can save herself.
Yes, we love the 90s girl power arc for
Yes.
Daphne.
We're like, oh, wait, that was problematic. We've got Fred, the leader, his fancy ascot.
All
He's the
leaders
guy
have
in
ascots.
charge.
That's a
Always,
fact.
everyone. And Velma, the nerd.
I loved Velma. I was always obsessed with Velma as a kid.
Yes. Oh man. We'll talk a little bit
We'll
more
get
about
into it.
Velma
Yeah.
later on. We're gonna go a little bit more in the history, and just in the theme of people copycatting. Scooby Doo inspired a wide variety of animated shows about teens solving mysteries with their pet or animal mascot.
I noticed that when you talked about the characters, you didn't give Scoobert Doobert his dues,
Oh,
and I'm really
you're
I'm
right.
offended by that.
I am sorry. Yes, we also have, of course, the man himself, Scooby Doo, who is also a coward, but can be inspired into brief moments of courage by his delicious Scooby snacks.
I too am food motivated in situations of fear.
Yes, there you go.
Tag
And
yourself. I'm Scooby Doo.
I'm Scooby. So various Scooby-Doo series and movies aired through the 70s and 80s. I thought it was really interesting that like for a lot of these like kind of spin-offs, they would just cut out Fred, Velma, and Daphne and just have Shaggy and Scooby and Cy, Scrappy Doo.
Scraps,
Scrappy Doo.
little scraps. Yeah.
But the show remained super popular in reruns, syndications through the 90s. They were still making direct to video movies. I definitely remember watching lots of the original Scooby Doo on Cartoon Network in like
Oh hell yeah.
syndication in
Yeah.
in the 90s and the early 2000s.
That was one of my few shows that I like knew exactly what time it was on from.
Yes.
Like I was like, okay, from this time to this time. Nobody talk to me. I'm watching Scooby Doo.
I'm watching my stories.
My program. My stories.
I do. So I want to shout out just a few of my personal faves. And then if you want to add any to this list, certainly feel free. I very clearly remember the 13 Ghosts of Scooby Doo being in reruns. So this was from 1985. And I believe it had come up on the podcast before because it featured our good old pal Vincent Price.
Yeah.
So this was one that featured Shaggy and Scooby being tricked into opening a box of actual demons that were then set loose on the world. So this is one that had real monsters in it. So
real life demons.
Real life demons. So I guess I should say, if anyone who's listening to this episode has not seen Scooby Doo, the basic format is the gang pulls up and is investigating a seemingly supernatural occurrence. And then in the end, it turns out to be someone in a mask or
some
a
old
sheet.
white guy, usually.
Some old white guy causing trouble. And he says, I would have gotten away with it if it weren't for you meddling kids.
And your dog.
Which I feel like now as I'm saying it, perhaps Scooby-Doo is like the foundations of my skeptic life. Because I'm like, it's like, never
it's
a ghost.
Dude in a mask.
It's just a dude. It's just some dude.
Here's the thing though. that plays out until it doesn't. Until it's a real demon, like in the 13 Ghosts of
It's true.
Scooby-Doo.
It's true. And I feel like a lot of like kind of these ancillary versions of Scooby-Doo end up with real things, because the next one that I was a huge fan of growing up, 1988, was Scooby-Doo and the Ghoul School.
Yes, I was like, please give it to me. I know what
Yes.
you're gonna say.
Obsessed. I was obsessed with this movie. So this is a movie in which Scooby, Shaggy, and Scrappy Doo are hired to be gym teachers at a finishing school for monster girls. So it features
Yeah.
daughters of the Universal Monsters, as lovely young ladies. And I was so obsessed with this movie. I thought that this was the coolest thing. I wanted to be a ghoul at the ghoul school.
Yeah, I feel like there are so many things in Scooby-Doo that are pathways to being queer. The Ghoul School is one of those things.
Yes.
Like, if look me in the eyes, listeners who can't see us right now, and tell me that if you loved Scooby-Doo, specifically certain episodes, that you are now not a bisexual person at minimum.
I was so obsessed with Sibella, the Dracula's
Oh
daughter, the
yeah,
vampire girl. She
yeah.
was like purple and had purple hair, and I just thought she was the coolest.
She is the coolest.
She is the coolest.
Well, not quite. There are some cooler people
There
coming our way.
certainly are, who appeared perhaps in 1999 in Scooby-Doo and the Witch's Ghost.
Yeah.
So this is one which also, I mean, this is not the cool person we were referring to, but another extremely cool person, Tim Curry,
Whoop,
plays
whoop.
a horror novelist in this this film, who invites Mysteries Inc. to come to his New England hometown where his ancestor has been maligned as a witch and he's trying to clear her name. Except, oops, surprise, he's evil and his ancestor was an evil witch.
Oh no.
But the plot dims when compared to the glory of the Hex
Of the
Girls.
Hex Girls.
I my so my notes literally say Hex Girls, 3 exclamation points, parentheses. Oh no, I'm so gay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I
That's really
had
all I have to add to that.
I
Yeah.
had the Scooby Doo and the Witch's Ghost soundtrack CD,
Oh
and I
hell
would
yeah.
just listen to the Hex Girl songs over and over again. And I was just like, wow, I'm just really a fan
I
of
just
these
think they're
cool
really
ladies
cool.
for no particular reason. And I feel like, not to tell on myself, but I feel like it was probably the Hex Girls that led me to my brief Wiccan phase,
Oh yeah.
because obviously they were Wiccans and we're talking about, herbs and natural healing and good magic, and I was just like, I'm down for that, except for mostly I'm just like, I want people like the Hex Girls to think that I'm cool.
I
Why
want
not
to
me?
I want to lure myself a big titty goth girlfriend, so
Yes.
I'm going to start practicing natural medicine.
Oh, all those Hex Girls.
Yeah, I them and then like Shigo are the
Yes.
two specific cartoon moments I remember having and being like, "Oh no."
Oh no.
Oh no.
Oh man, Shigo. Hell yeah. All right, I'm about to move on to live action. Do you have another animated Scooby-Doo
I do.
experience that you would
I
like to discuss?
I do, and I have an embarrassing story that I don't
Ooh,
remember if
even
I've
better.
actually shared this with you before. Scooby Doo had a massive impact on my life in this way. So my favorite like animated villain of favorite but also not favorite at the same time is the Creeper.
Oh yeah.
Um, and I believe that episode is one of the like OGs from 1970, 69, 70 season. Because there's kind of like the few villains that recur several
Mm-hmm.
times throughout the series. The Creeper's one of them. One of them is that like guy in the scuba suit.
Yes, I was super scared of that. I was very scared of the
Yeah.
diving suit guy.
Yeah, he was spoopy. Um, but so I don't know if it's the first episode where the creeper shows up. I don't remember, but basically he hides in the back of the mystery machine. He like crawls in the back and covers himself in blankets, and so like they don't know that he's in the mystery machine with them, and they're like
Ugh.
driving. Um, and that for some reason scared the piss out of me as a kid. I was like, oh my god, someone is gonna hide in the back of my car and kill me.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I became, this followed me into adulthood, and when I became a person who drove, my first car was a Ford Explorer, and it had, you know, a roomy trunk. Which, if you all know anything about me now, I now drive a Beetle, which nobody can hide in a Beetle.
I was just gonna say, do you drive a Beetle so no one can hide in it?
Pretty much. Pretty much. No, I wanted one anyway, but also it's a
But bonus,
bonus.
yes.
I can see everything in that little tin can car. But so for the like year and a half that I drove a Ford Explorer, every single time that I got into the car, I would sit there very, very quiet. I would get in, I would shut the door, and I would sit there as if I were just an unsuspecting victim. And I would like toy with a few things. I'd be really, really quiet. And then I would scream at the top of my lungs out of nowhere because I was convinced in my head, I was like, if someone's hiding in the trunk, I'm going to startle them and they'll be so surprised that they'll pop up and I'll know they're there and I can run.
There you go.
And I literally did that for a year and a half of my
Oh,
life
Midge.
because of Scoobert Doo.
I mean, I definitely look in my back seat every time that I get in my car, and then like once I start driving, I'm usually like, wait, did I actually look, and like whip around and look back there. So I definitely feel that I did not get into the full
into
skit
screaming.
the full skit of it, but
You never did safety screaming?
I did
Just
not.
me? Okay.
But yeah, that
But yeah,
is
that's
scary.
literally directly because of Scooby-Doo. It's the
Oh,
creeper that triggered that fear in me. So thanks, Scooby. You
Scooby
made me
Scooby
safer.
Doo. All right. So we're gonna jump to 2002, which was when the
Woo-hoo.
live action Scooby Doo movie came out. Which is another one which it's kind of fun to be like, oh, like Scooby Doo, kind of is like a baby horror, and it has some horror royalty in the film, like
Hell
Miss
yeah.
Sarah Michelle and Mr. Matthew Lillard.
Yeah, I cannot imagine a better casting for Shaggy than Matthew Lillard.
Right. Oh
It's
my
so
god.
good.
He's so good. Yeah, I definitely saw this in theaters
I
and
did too, yeah.
was like, hell yeah, Scooby Doo. And I stand by it. I think it's a fun movie.
Another I got another confession to make. Taylor and I watched the Scooby Doo movies every single year at least once. Like, we love these movies
Ah.
so much. And I mean, every year for the 10 years we've been together, we watch these movies, and we also usually watch Spy Kids.
Oh man, I have not watched My Kids in my adult
Oh,
life, but I was a big
I
fan of
recommend
that.
it highly. But yeah, I still, as a nearly 30-year-old person, think these movies are incredible. I love Scooby Doo.
Yes. And this, kind of tying into how we started the episode, James Gunn, who wrote the Scooby Doo live action movies, tweeted in a tweet that has since been deleted, but
Hmm.
claims that Velma was explicitly gay in his script for the movie, and that he got pushback from Warner Brothers, and it just kind of kept watering down and watering down until it was no longer gay.
Remind me, is the first movie the one with Seth Green, or is that the second?
I think it's the first one.
Okay, because I saw a meme the other day that almost killed me that said, "How many more lesbians will Seth Green date
Yes.
before his before his journey is complete?"
uh,
For
but
those of you who
no.
are not Buffy people, Seth Green
Yes.
also plays Willow's boyfriend for several seasons before she comes out.
Incredible. But yeah, I feel like so many people also have like a very queer awakening for Velma in Scooby Doo, especially when she gets all sexy.
I think
And
Velma was one of the first times I felt like I saw myself on screen. Does that make sense?
yeah.
Like Hex Girls and things like that were more of like, oh, I think they're really cool and hot. But Velma was the first time I was like, I saw a character that was queer coded and felt like, oh, that's me.
Mhm.
Like
Nerdy.
I too am the nerdy virgin girl.
Right. I remember being like excited that there was like a cartoon character who had glasses
Yeah, same.
and being like, "Oh yeah, it's
And I
just like
had
me."
brown hair and bangs when I was a kid too. So I like I was dressing up as Velma all the time and solving
Full Velma.
mysteries.
Full Velma action. But with the success of all these reruns, obviously, Midge and I were both members of the legion of people who were still watching Scooby Doo reruns and the live action movies. Scooby Doo returned to Cartoon Network in What's New Scooby Doo, which was a full return to the original format, but updated to the 21st century. And since then, they've just kept making new series and new movies. And there was another I think so. The problem is, of course, all of these are just named some variations of Scooby Doo and some other words. So
Right.
it's really hard to keep track of which are which. But I think Scooby Doo Mysteries Incorporated, the director from that show, has also said that it was his intention that Velma be read as gay in his creation. And there's a storyline there where she does date Shaggy. And I remember people being like, this is dumb. But he said that it was like,
Feels weird, but okay.
right, that it was supposed to feel weird, that it was supposed to be like an indicator that, like, oh, like Velma's trying this thing, but it isn't really right for her. Hint, hint.
Velma tries comp het. Like
Right. And we have come up all the way to the new Trick or Treat Scooby Doo, which involves Velma explicitly swooning over a sexy lady. And if you haven't seen the clip, I'm guessing if you're listening to this, you probably have, but I highly recommend checking it out because it's just such a cute moment. And like, it was just really nice to see that kind of like classic dorky cartoon character crush moment for like
hmm
a same sex attraction moment because you don't really ever get that.
Yeah. I I just love Velma. I really do.
I do. And on the heels of all that excitement, HBO Max announced
Yeah.
another reimagining.
I'm really
Um,
hyped about this.
yes, an adult-oriented Scooby-Doo version in which Velma is Southeast Asian and played by Mindy Kaling, which looks super cool, super fun. HBO, please see how excited we are for Velma to be explicitly queer, and make sure that that is represented in your show also.
Will say I'm cautiously optimistic because I believe in Mindy Kaling bringing that to the table.
Hmm.
Like I'm sure she always has such a heavy hand in any project she works on as a writer as well,
Yeah.
and so like I could see her definitely coming to the table with that and being like, hey, we need to take a look at this. So
Yes.
I'm cautiously excited.
Yeah, I'm enthused. I'm excited by it. I'm excited by the idea of like kind of a harder version of Mysteries Inc. Kind of
Yeah.
taking sort of that into more of like a teen horror in the style of like a Buffy style, like
Well,
teens
and the
and
trailer
bad
for it was
stuff.
very like, I mean, it was definitely based on Halloween.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
that was really fun. Like, yeah, seeing them kind of enter a slasher type arena, I think is really fun and exciting.
Yeah. So
Because they
Scooby
are
Doo.
horror royalty,
They
I
are.
think.
They are. It lives on. Like they've been rocking it since 1969, and we're still into it. It was just the right mix of spooky and funny for me when I was a kid, and it remains, I think, really fun and charming to this day. And I'm glad I had that little teaser for my future life as a spooky girl.
Yes. I'm really excited actually. So my local theater, Screenland Armor, does a Shocktoberfest,
Oh yes.
and they show at least one movie all October long, classic horror, Universal monster movies, all kinds of things. But they have one day coming up that is very specifically Scooby-Doo Day, and they're showing the live action films, but after 9 p.m. there's an adults only screening of the first film, because my understanding is that there was a lot of that film cut because it was like
Yeah.
too adult. But my theater has the like full cut of the film, and
Ooh.
so we're gonna do the adults only screening of Scooby-Doo, and I'm very excited about it. It's gonna be
Yeah.
very, very fun.
You'll have to report back. That sounds super cool.
I will. And I think it's either that movie or the redo series you were talking about that came out after the movies, that has the when Simple Plan did the theme song,
Oh
and it's like
yeah,
a
so
pop punk
good.
like what new Scooby
I
Doo
love
coming after you,
it.
gonna solve it. It's a banger. It's a banger.
It is a banger. Yeah, that is my Scooby-Doo tribute.
I'm so
Uh
glad you brought this to the table, because this is one of my favorite childhood spookies.
It was
Uh,
so good. It was so good. And if any of you out there were also Scooby Doo fans, definitely drop by the Instagram and let us know. Let us know if the Creeper inspired any lifestyle changes for you. If any of these characters gave you a queer awakening. We got to know. Got to
Penny,
know.
I have an important thought that I think you and I should do,
Ooh.
a collab and do a Velma and Daphne cosplay for Instagram.
Oh, we
I
should.
think we should do that.
Yes, let's do it.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
Oh, oh. I just realized I'm seeing you in a couple days. I was like, or we can take a picture in person.
Ooh, all right. I'll have to go ruffle through my wardrobe and see what I can
Scramble for
find.
your orange turtleneck. I know you have one.
I
Yeah.
do. I do. All right, friends. Thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it. We're happy to be spending spooky season with you. And if you are enjoying the show, we would love it if you would subscribe. And if you have the time, it really helps us out when you leave a review on wherever you listen to your podcasts. And when you leave a review, we like to read them right here on the show.
We
Do you
do.
have a review for me today, Midge?
I sure do. This one is titled Hey Ghoul Hey with a little ghost
Hey.
emoji. Love that. This is from Gwenny Boo123. This is my favorite podcast. It is just chef's kiss. Mwah. It is so fun and spooky. It's really like having a night with your best school friends and just sitting around laughing till it hurts. I also love learning new things about spooky topics. I got a little behind on episodes and have been binging them, and I don't know what I'm going to do with my life after I catch up and have to sit and wait for each new episode. I usually listen on Spotify, but I downloaded Apple Podcasts just so I could leave you guys a well-deserved 5-star review.
Aw, thank you, Gwenny Boo.
Thank you, Gwenny. That's awesome.
Much
I,
appreciated.
I hope you haven't caught up yet, but here's a new episode just for you.
Hope you like it. Hope you're a Scooby-Doo fan.
Yeah.
So, like I said before, if you want to keep up with us and what the podcast is up to, you can find us on Instagram at Ghouls Night In Pod. And if you are looking for me, you can find me at Penny Snark.
And you can find me everywhere at Midge Munster.
And until next time,
Goodbye.
Bye.